But now, once again, I'm really excited to welcome to the stage my dear friend, my dear sister, the incredible Tiffany, don't forget the R, Warren.
Hi, everyone. Was that panel not amazing? I took a few seconds because I was just trying to take in all the information that we just heard, but I am super proud to be here to moderate a panel with some of my, I can't even put industry in front of it, but friends who are in this fight for diversity and inclusion while running some of the biggest marketing organizations in the world. So they represent, you know, those powerful companies, and we're thrilled to have them here for a candid conversation, but really it's about how those forces, diversity and inclusion, impact their personal and professional lives. And as you'll see, it isn't just a matter of business for them. So joining me on the stage is Chief Brand Officer at Citi, Carla Hassan. Global CMO of Facebook, Antonio Lucio.
Wow, look at that.
Okay.
I should have brought more people.
Yeah.
And last but not least, the CMO of Verizon, Scotti. And they all actually have something in common. Carla and Antonio were recognized as our first ever Ad Week ADCOLOR champions, so let's give it up for them. And Antonio will be recognized tomorrow for his work with Ad Fellows at Verizon as an ADCOLOR catalyst, so congratulations. Diego, excuse me.
We get confused all the time because we're both so tall.
You're so tall. But as you may have noticed, Mark Pritchard is not with us. He sends his well wishes to all of us, but he could not join us today. But we are in great hands with the panelists that we have, so we'll get started. I think one of the things that I wanted to cover first was really to talk to you guys about personally how D&I shows up in your life. And, you know, we had our call where we were talking about this panel and what we were going to talk about, and I think the question that hit most of you guys the most was, when did you guys know that you were different? And so I'll start with you, Diego.
Well, first of all, good morning, everybody, and thank you for having us here. It's great to be on the stage with Antonio and Carla. Well, I'm come from Argentina, and I only came to the U.S. when I was 24 years old. I had the benefit of living in a country in which, or growing up in a country in which being different was the norm. So I never really thought about these issues growing up. And then when I get to the U.S., I realized like, oh, I guess I am different. And two things that were very important for me were, number one, the importance of the community that embraced me and taught me and helped me to feel included and become included. But then, and this is going back to my growing up in Argentina, the fact that I didn't allow myself to be defined from by you know, where I come from, or my accent, or my heritage. You are defined by your heart. You are defined by your instinct. You are defined by who you are, and that's how you need to lead, and that's how you need to grow in your roles.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Miss Carla.
This was actually one of the, I would say, first of all, I am so honored to be here, seriously, and to be on this stage with these three humans is a real privilege for me, who I call my friends, and so some of us who go way back. So I'm really happy to be here, and thank you, Tiffany, for asking us to come here. This question really hit home for me because I think, most of you probably just by looking at me would never tell where I was from, how I grew up, et cetera, but I'm an immigrant. I grew up in the Middle East. I was born and raised in the Middle East, and I moved here in 1990 in a pretty kind of, I would classify it as a pretty violent entry into the US. But interestingly enough, when you asked the question, when did you know you were different, I actually thought, wait, it's not when I knew I was different, because growing up in Dubai, much similar to Argentina, it's 80% expat. Everybody's different. it's when I moved to the US that I really realized I was different, but the interesting thing is that I would ask myself when I allowed myself to believe or to acknowledge that I was different. Because I pass, it's safe, right? Like if I changed my accent, I went from speaking Arabic or speaking in a really, really strong accent and getting made fun of, being called, put sand in front of the N-word, and there were days when that's what I was called. What's your last name? Zachem, what? Things like that. Don't piss her off because she'll, blow you up. And people thought they were joking, and your choice is you sink or you swim. And I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to swim by changing my accent and pretending that I was as American could be. And it wasn't until a couple years later, Antonia, you've known me for how long? I've never ever talked about being an immigrant. I've never talked about my story before until probably a year and a half ago when I woke up and I was like, what is wrong with you? The opportunity that you have to be able to give back to people who are just like you and you haven't done that. And so it was a real moment in my life of not really understanding that I hadn't acknowledged that I was different. And so those days are gone, and I feel really happy, and it's really freeing to be able to talk about who I am and where I come from, and that I dream in Arabic, and that it's it's all good. Like I am who I am. That is really, really freeing and very empowering. So, thank you.
Carla, quickly, what does your shirt say?
Oh, it says Inta Kama Inta, which is you as is. It's a Lebanese designer named Dima Hayad that created this movement around it's okay to look like who you are, or to be who you are. And so she created these T-shirts that were first in English, you as is, and now she did it in Arabic with another Arab designer, Nadine Kanzo. So I love wearing their work. So
thank you
for asking.
So. Antonio.
Well, first, let me start by saying, what a freaking beautiful audience we have here.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, give yourselves a round of applause. Smart, beautiful, the real representation of what America is and what the world should be. So I'm incredibly honored to be here with you today. In my particular case, I share the story with both Carla and Diego. My family moved back and forth from Spain and Puerto Rico twice, so I always had a little bit of a different accent and a little bit of a different clothes. My family always reinforced the fact that different is okay. The real first shock with culture was in the US when I went to Louisiana State University, deep in the South. Go Tigers, we play against Texas today, but who's counting? And I remember I had even a stronger accent than I have right now, if you can believe that, and I was in an English class. And I saw these two beautiful blonde girls coming to approach me, and I'm going like, oh, wow, this is good. And one of them, in a very condescending tone, said, it was an English lit class, and she goes, it must be so hard for you to actually take this class. How did you do? I had done an A in that particular test. And that moment, although it shocked me. It was the first time that I was treated, and I would never forget it, I was treated as a very different type of individual. Again, thanks to the way that my parents raised me, that became an engine, that became a source of motivation. And also pride, if you will. I will show. I know that I'm going to have to work twice as hard. Yes, I know that but I will show. Then the last part was when I started working in the domestic division, and I can honestly say that I was grateful that I began my career in the international markets where, like Carla and Diego said, we were all different. We all had accents. We had lack of representation of women. You remember at PepsiCo at the time. But we were all different. The moment that I began to assume responsibility for global roles at Visa, I began to understand and see the problem of diversity that this country has with women, and particularly with people of color. I was a big boss at the time, so now they had to tolerate my accent, my aggressive use of my hands. But I can honestly say, and this is why I'm so passionate about the work that Diego, Carla, and you have been doing for so many years, that I don't think that I would be seated here in front of you if instead of the international division, I would have started my career in the domestic division. I was too different. I came from the wrong school. Well, you see what you see. And at that point in time, I think I would have been categorized as aggressive. Now I'm categorized as a leader and a passionate leader.
Visionary, yes. Well, I mean, that goes into the next question, which some of you guys touched upon when naming your difference or when you knew you were different, but now you've turned it around, and how has your difference become a source of inspiration? You touched upon it a little bit, but also your superpower.
No, listen, for me, it became a real, not only an inspiration for myself, but it became a force within me to say, I have to do something to help others. And the point of that is that, listen, I know that this is difficult, that we all have worked, or many of you have worked or been in situations in which either you've been discriminated, or you've been condescended, or you've been considered one way or the other because of who we are. So it's not easy. It's not easy, and I think we need to start with that. But for me, it became a matter of what can I do to not help, not only talking about these things and give inspiration to others to kind of like be themselves and fight for what they believe, but also make a change. And I think from my perspective and my company's perspective, it's been an interesting challenge, because I thought it was going to be, when I came to Verizon, I've been now there for 5 years. I thought, well, to Antonio's example of the university, I thought, well, let's see how this company behaves. And it's interesting. Everybody in this company is different. I already found a leadership group that was so convinced that diversity was important for the company. But what it was most intriguing for me, and what for me has become a real source of power, is the point that diversity is not just the right thing to do, but it's good for business. So it has become a real mantra for me, which is to show that then when you have diverse people in the company, when you have diverse voices around the table, decisions are better, the work gets better, and we also do the right thing for society and for the individuals that we work with.
Awesome, thank you.
Can I just add something?
Okay.
Because you've created an amazing theme, which is take a stand.
Yeah.
And I think we all need to take a stand to accelerate the pace of change. I am getting a bit impatient.
Yeah.
And let me tell you why.
Yeah.
Let me tell you why. In 2 weeks' time, I will have my first grandchild.
Awesome.
I have 5 daughters, and is going to be a girl.
You are blessed.
By the way, the girl is going to be called Luna, and my daughter, who's incredibly feminist, is going to have her last name ahead of her husband's last name.
Yes.
I don't mind. So it's going to be Luna, Lucio Gratan, or the infamous LLG.
Wow. Nice.
But the reason why I'm telling this deeply personal story is because I'm coming to terms with the realization that now I'm responsible for 2 generations after me.
Yeah.
And my call to action, the things that I want to stand up for is, I honestly think, as contradictory as it sounds, on diversity we need to do less. Let me tell you what I mean. We have to do less panels, although I love these people. I could spend dinners and vacations with these people. We need to do less panels, and we need to do more actions.
Yes.
We also need to do less new diversity initiatives and concentrate on those that are working.
Amen.
And there are many that are working.
Amen.
And the last piece is that we need to stop the race for the press release and begin to create forums for the industry to get together so that instead of competing with each other, we begin to work together towards that end. This is what this is about.
Oh yeah, I was like,
this
we did it.
group
It's
of
called
people
ADCOLOR.
is about. And I'm honestly, I'm getting very concerned
Yeah.
about the level of fragmentation,
Yeah.
the level of bickering, the level of political overtones that at some point in time the industry is having. My scorecard is better than yours. My initiative is better than yours. We need to come together. The work is so important, and I personally don't have time to lose.
Amen.
And there's not a lot of us, right? Like
No.
that's the
No.
thing, there's
No.
not a lot of us. And
Yeah.
so what we're doing as leaders, if we do have each of our own initiatives, et cetera, it becomes more of an ego play than it becomes an action play. And I just think that we all sit up here and we wholeheartedly agree that having a room full of people that have very different perspectives and come from different places is good for business, right? We all agree that, and yet our egos get in the way of like, you know, we're on this thing or that council or this panel or whatever, and it just needs to, I feel like we just need to come together. There aren't enough of us to have all these things be fragmented. There aren't. And, you know, it's funny when you say, you know, what is the one, you know, thing that, you know, when you're now, what is the superpower? What has this enabled you to do? For me, I go back to what Antonio said, which is we're leaders. Like the top of the spear is us now in our industries. And so if that's freeing. That should be energizing and that should be freeing. And we should have the courage and the bravery to just create action. And a lot of action, by the way. I've stolen a lot of stuff that I'm doing from the two of you guys. So, you know,
But I think
there's no
that's
shame in that.
But that I think should be the prevalent view. I think, you know, to Antonio's point, the things that we are most worried about right now, to Antonio's point, is diversity and inclusion has become fashionable. So then if you don't have that on your agenda, if you don't have that in your panels, there is a problem. Listen, this is wonderful. That means that we have achieved a lot. Being on the agenda is great. The problem is then the transition to action. To Antonio's point, it becomes just talk. So what that momentum has generated is a lot of activity. And I think we all were very excited at the beginning because there were a lot of programs, a lot of conversation, a lot of like organizations, you know, taking stand. But it has become now too much. So now what happens is that a lot of the big organizations that we all expect to take a stand and make change, they're almost paralyzed to the point about, you know, maybe, you know, different forces or opinions about how this should be done. So then what that has created is a lot of companies taking a stand themselves. My company, Antonio, et cetera. What it then, it makes all of these efforts, you know, not as big as they could be. With that, fellows, not that I want to talk about what we've done, but it's an interesting example because we said since the beginning, listen, we're going to make our program, our know-how, our processes open to everybody. We're going to put it in a package and we're going to give it to any company that wants it. We even have a team of people that are consultants that work with companies to do it because we just want to make it actionable and fast. I tell you, I haven't been very successful to get some of these organizations to help us because everybody has their own program. It's a little bit of a yin and yang because at the same time we're trying to support everything that is out there that makes sense. But I think now we're at a moment that we need to put, take stock.
Yeah, and I think, I mean,
and go from there.
yeah, just to add on that, I mean, I think it's a very, very important issue. We talked about it a little bit, you know, in the green room, and I'll just say that, you know, I've been doing this for 22 plus years, and particularly when I started, you know, people were just excited to have an intern. You know, they would check a box and they were happy to have an intern. I've seen more strategy put behind programs and initiatives, but if a program and initiative is not going to help that person or the first person you see when you walk into an agency in a company, if they don't know what you're doing, then you're not doing enough. And so really what my lane is here with ADCOLOR is to build a community. So when you're ready to have those programs and initiatives, there is a community there waiting for you. And I know that there is a little bit of apathy around being asked constantly to participate. But you guys and this was, I don't even think it was 10 years ago, but I remember looking at, you know, Ad Age and Ad Week and seeing the letters that you wrote to the industry calling your agencies to do better. And it was, we just talked about it was a renaissance, because I just learned from the first panel. Thank Thank you very much. But you guys really, really did take a stand, and it was very, very unique. And what really pushed you to do that? I mean, obviously you weren't seeing enough progress, but it was very bold to take a stand publicly and say, you know, I need you to do better.
Well, Antonio
So-
did it
Antonio
first.
started
Yeah.
it.
We,
Yeah.
Actually, General Mills was the first,
Yeah.
to be honest.
remember.
But you know, the issue is that I think there's enough body of research
Yeah.
to prove the business case. Diverse teams perform better as long as the tasks are complex. On simple tasks, they don't. On complex tasks, which is the true driver of innovation, they do. I mean, there's academic work, there's consulting work, there's the individual work of all the companies. So how much more do we have to talk about the business case of diversity?
Yeah.
And the playbook is there as well. You need senior management commitment. You need to set very specific objectives.
Yes.
You need to have very specific plans of actions and monitoring device to do it. You need a pipeline of talent. You need representation and inclusion, because representation without inclusion, as Diego has said, is a waste of time. But the opposite is also true, which is what's happening now. A lot of conversations about inclusion without representation is a bunch of people talking about empathy without having a truly representative group of people.
Very true.
And then you do need a scorecard, and then you need to report the business case. The playbook is there. There are best practices from Diego. There are best practices from Carla. There are best practices from, and yet we meet to design even more.
More, yeah.
I think that's kind of the point, that, I mean, the program that Diego has should be leveraged more widely.
Yeah.
MAPE has been doing that for 40 years, something similar
Yes.
but related.
Yeah.
Woo! And also, we want to give a shout out to AAF Most Promising, which launched my career. So there is a lot of organizations that are doing amazing things and doing the work, but need the resources. You guys skipped directly to leadership, so I'm gonna let's get there. But specifically, I want to talk about, since we have you guys here, you know, there is a huge prevalence of, you know, cancel culture when a brand does wrong, and you guys really sit at the head of the table when it comes to receiving the brunt of whatever happens. How do you navigate that, or how have you navigated any missteps in your career generally?
Look, I'll give you an example of something that potentially could have been a misstep, and actually, by the way, might still be a misstep. So, you know, but hopefully isn't. So we're preparing to, so at Citi, we actually are still the only company in the US that has outwardly, publicly come out and said that we have, with our pay equity study. So we've said basically we've got a representation issue in our organization, and that's why the median pay of men and women is you know, men get paid 29% more than women. We don't have a, you know, you and me at the same level. We get paid the same, but we have a representation issue for people of color and for women. So we've publicly said that, and we've publicly put our goals out there for the next 3 years. That's great. We haven't really talked about it much from a consumer lens, and so we're looking to do a campaign. We are literally actively in the middle of a campaign, breaking it here, that we're doing something International Day of the Girl. We're gonna launch it, right? So we're in the middle of doing this, you know, doing some of the work, and I started to hear a few people say, well, you know, I'm not sure I like that you're using little girls, or I'm not, like I just kept hearing that. One time, another, there were 3 people that were brave enough to kind of say something to me, or to say something to people on my team. And I thought, well, what the hell, what's wrong with them? Like, it's gonna be really cool, it's gonna be, you know, like, and I stopped for a second and I thought, hold on. If 3 people were willing to talk, I'm sure there are other people that actually have the same perspective. And so we went and talked to those people. We had a conversation with them. We understood what their issues were. We actually revised a few things in the campaign as we were building it because of what they said. Now, do I know that there's not going to be 100% misstep and someone's not going to come and say, well, you shouldn't have used a girl to talk about pay equity issues? I don't know, right? But what I will tell you is we have done everything we can to listen, and I think that's where when I think about once a misstep happens, I think you need to stop and listen. So even before the misstep, I think you need to listen, but once something happens, listening is critical, because my perception of something that's acceptable may not be acceptable to you, and I can't discount that opinion. I can't discount your perspective and your point of view. And so listening, I think, is critical, and then being authentic and being honest about the mistake that you've made. And then there are other, depending on the gravity of the situation, there are many other things that need to happen. But I just think if you start with authenticity, if you start with listening, if you start with understanding where people are coming from, maybe the missteps don't happen. I could have easily ignored their perspective, and I didn't on purpose, because I knew that, again, one person has that perspective and is willing to speak. I'm sure other people feel the same way.
But that's part, I think, the connection between the importance of having diverse voices around the marketing table.
Yes.
And how do you deal with these types of crises? I think a lot of these types of crises that surprise big companies is because the people that they have around the table when the decisions are being made, when the campaigns are being created, they don't have that diversity of opinion. So I think we always think about diversity in the context of gender or sexual orientation, etc. But I need to have around my table the most diverse type of beliefs, understandings, questions. I need that, because that's what saves you in the first place of creating something from a completely wrong place. The other thing that to me is very important is, and we all represent companies here that are very big companies. Verizon has 150 million customers, everybody from 9 to 99 and everything in between. So I do need to start from a perspective that making everybody happy is going to be very difficult all the time. Now, with that said, it doesn't mean that I need to be going around thinking about marketing to alienate different groups that are our customers just because I want to be disruptive or we want to be breakthrough. I think what happens today is that the society is in a place in which nothing that anybody does is enough. And I think that is a problem, because some of these issues that we're dealing with in society are complex issues. We need leaders in these companies in corporate America to really think about their business as responsible businesses, not just about the profit side, and then have a society, the understanding and the belief that any step that gets taken in the right direction is a good step. So instead of being cynical, confrontational, or just complain for everything, let's applaud every step that we make and try to help to make it better. Absolutely. That's what we should be doing.
Absolutely.
So if you want a crisis, you can talk to me. So
I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't.
But you didn't create the crisis.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, whoa, taking a lot of responsibility.
Like my daughter said, Dad, people are coming out of the fire, run towards it. Our platforms touches the life of close to 3 billion people around the world. Is probably the most diverse community that has ever existed. As we are going and dealing with issues of trust and issues of value, trust in the company, what it represents, and what we need to do, value, the perceived value of each one of the apps in people's lives, it has become increasingly important, the need to have multiplicity of points of views. Yeah. And like Diego said, not just the obvious one, gender, sexual orientation, race, ethnicity, but also because of the space that we occupy, we also need diversity of points of view in terms of political orientation at the global level, because we live in a situation where when you stand for freedom of expression, you will get accused from the left, and I'm talking not just the US, the same happens in Europe, and Asia, and you have different points of view from the right to, so having a broader definition of what diversity is so that all those opinions are part of the decision-making process, we see it as the only possible way of being able to actually reestablish both the trust as well as the value of each one of the apps. In my particular case, I am living now yet another dimension of diversity, what Cindy Gallop calls cross-generational diversity. Mark Zuckerberg is my daughter's age. 20 years from now, he will be younger than I am today. And what it creates is an incredible level of dynamism when you have not just diverse point of view on the traditional levels that we talked about, but also diversity from an age standpoint. You have the energy and the innovation coming from youth. You also have the experience and the need for building stuff that stand the test of time that other generations can provide. So the word diversity and what you're trying to do, which is expanding it to the multiple dimensions, I think is absolutely the right thing to do.
Thank you. You know, we have a couple of questions that I would list as my favorites, and one, you know, Carla, if you want to take this, is last night interviewed M. Night Shyamalan, just if you didn't know. Yeah.
We saw the pictures.
I mean, I didn't see it anywhere.
It was so
Yes,
cool.
all over social media.
I was wondering
No,
what
it
you were
was, like,
doing
so
last night.
ridiculous.
I
Yeah, it
was
was good.
wondering. I had no clue.
You were
We
a
have to
little
watch it on
starstruck,
the
huh?
way to the event today.
No,
when
I
they
wasn't
told us.
starstruck. He was starstruck. Thank you very much.
There you go.
There you go.
Anywho, I asked him a question. I said, you know, what movie would you be watching right now? Not your own, or what's your favorite movie? And he gave some great answers. So which brands, you know, that you admire that are getting it right right now, and why?
Okay, that's a tough question, actually. And let me tell you why, because I don't know that everyone's getting it right all the time.
Oh,
And so I think, like, I could give you examples of brands that I think stand for the right things and sometimes execute, you know, in a way that isn't great. Even with the best of intentions, you know, so I literally was racking my brain about this question. I thought, okay, so, you know, an easy one to talk about is to say, look what Dove did years ago, right, with Real Beauty, and how it sort of, you know, redefined what beauty means, and it was much more inclusive, and that's awesome. That'll be my answer. And then I'm like, oh, well, but like a year ago, they kind of got into trouble. So, well, maybe not them, right? So I just literally kept thinking about what are the brands and who are the brands out there that I think are doing it. And almost every one, I found either good intention or something good, and then something that was a misstep. And so, you know, I'm dodging the question a little bit because honestly, it was hard for me a little bit. And I didn't want to do the obvious ones. Like, I didn't want to do ones that I thought personally were doing it well. So, but I will say one that, and not because, Diego, you're sitting here, but one thing that I think you have done really, really well, and I wouldn't even call it a program or a marketing program, but just in the way that you are thinking about your Ad Fellows program and what you're doing, and really making meaningful action taking meaningful action in the industry and inviting others to come into it, I think is something that is really admirable, and something that I don't feel like I could walk off the stage and not give you, the proper, at least from my perspective, kudos that you deserve for that. And
Thank you.
You know, you have my commitment that we will come along with you as well, because it's a big.
Thank you.
It's something that's near and dear to my heart, and those that know me that are in the crowd know that I've been talking about this a lot recently, particularly as it relates to my own team, which, you know, when I think about even the look of my own team, it's not where it should be. And
Thank you.
so I'm dodging it, but I feel like, you know, I hope that's a good enough answer.
Thank you. Can I say thank you?
Uh-oh.
I just want to say thank you to her. But I want to make sure that you guys know that the Ad Fellows program, it wasn't my idea. It was the idea of the team of people that nobody was listening in the marketing team that got together in a room, and we said, why don't you guys look at what really is going on and give us some answers? And they came up with the thought like, listen, if you don't have a rotation across different agencies and companies so people can have exposure to different things, we're not going to really put people in the right places. They also said, well, if you don't pay for the expenses of the 8 months that people need to be in New York while they do this rotation, you're not going to get the right people. And if you don't partner with the right grassroots organizations to get the right talent from places that usually you don't get the talent, we're not going to really make an impact. I tell you this, I'm so proud that none of those things were my idea or the leader's idea. Was the team that came up with that. So that to me was a real lesson in and of itself, that what we need to do is to listen more to everybody that knows what's going on and free them up to create the solutions. Then use our power, our influence, our leadership to expand those things, to frame them, and then get them going. Yeah. That's what the responsibility that we have.
Antonio.
Sorry, Antonio.
That was great. I don't even know how to frame this question, but yeah.
I'm covering myself already.
Yeah. No, it's a good one. You called me up and you said, let's go to Cannes. And because of you, I got to be, and diversity got to be on the main stage of Cannes for really the first time.
Yeah.
And he didn't stop there. He created a program that brought over 30 young professionals to Cannes and gave them an experience of a lifetime. And I think what you do well as a disruptor is you look at the corridors of power and you make room for everybody else. And so talk about what that experience was like, not only creating that program, but being insistent that your agencies get involved in that.
Yeah, again, one of the things that Diego said that I fundamentally agree with, and I am worried about, is that diversity becomes the flavor of the month, of the year, of the 2 years. To transform an industry, we need holistic and systemic change. That means consistency and focus year after year after year after year. And honestly, the best example that we have is you, Tiffany, doing it for 20 years, starting small to this amazing place. And you've done it consistently. You've innovated, but you've innovated within a very narrow and focused lane, and you've been bringing people along the journey. I fundamentally believe that the only way that we're going to do it is exactly like that. We need the right objectives, we need the right process, we need to bring the right people into the conversation. And that is why I'm so passionate about bringing more people within the industry so that we don't fragment what we're doing. There's a lot of what's going to be the headline for next year because we already did the numbers. There's a lot of that type of thinking that we need to get over with. Given the diversity topic, a format Cannes last year was important, but was just a first step. It was opening the door so that the conversation continued. You continued the conversation. I was not even there, which is what I loved about it, and that's, I think, what we need to do. As I said, I'm in a hurry, and anything that I can do to push the agenda forward by supporting people like Diego, by supporting people like Carla that are going to stay longer than I will within the industry is what I'm about.
You're going to be around for a while,
Yeah.
Mr. Lucio. Give him a So we have a final question. Like, I really could talk to you guys all day. Like, I love you guys so hard. Okay, final question. I'll start with you, Carla. What is the one piece of advice? We have so many change makers, bosses. You guys all have your achievement tags. I can go down the list, but we have so many, and we have a lot of young people in the room. What piece of advice would you want to give them?
One? Oh, man.
Just one.
Just one. Why are you starting with me?
Because I can.
I know. I would say, don't be afraid to be you. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. Don't be afraid to ask for a seat at the table, and just be authentically yourself in that regard. it's insane. There's a moment, we talk a lot about tipping points, and I think this is a moment in time where even if it is lip service for some people, that gives you the ability to be yourself. It gives you the permission to be yourself right now. And I would say, don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of who you are. Don't be afraid of raising your hand and saying, I want in. I want a seat at the table, because you have so much to provide, way more than you can even imagine.
Thank you.
I think it's time to stand up, to rise up, to hold your voice. Your voice is needed more than ever. And if someone ever, at any point in time, calls you aggressive, call them back. Call them back. Nothing is more needed today than your voice. And by the way, I fundamentally believe that the world would be a much better place if we had more passionate people running our businesses.
Amen.
Amen.
For me, first I want to thank all of you for being here, because the fact that you're here is that it says that you care, that you want to make a difference, that you want to stand up. So thank you for that. Second, I would say you have to hold our leaders, ourselves, accountable. You know, when I ask my HR department to say, I want to see every slate of new positions with diverse candidates, and I want to see them every week for every employee in my organization, guess what happened? All of a sudden, the slates had a lot of diverse candidates. So my point is that big and small, the things that we do as leaders make a difference, because we are in a position of responsibility. So hold your leaders accountable. And the third thing, and finally, I want to finish as I started, which is what defines you is nothing else, nothing more than your heart, your intuition, your creativity, your talent. We are in business, right? So the most important thing is the results. That's what we're looking for as leaders, results. So believe in your talent, bring the best of it, and don't let anything else define you. What defines you is your talent. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to give a little fun fact. I would not be sitting on this stage today if not for Verizon. I was a Inroads intern in Inroads in 1992 when Verizon was the New England telephone company.
There you go.
And I was given an opportunity as a 17-year-old to be a supervisor, where I sent out technicians to put in physical phones. For those that don't know what physical phones are.
A landline.
With a long line that you had to drag to every room.
And then
that was my job. But I was given that chance in that summer to be a supervisor and to be a leader, and I wouldn't be sitting on this stage. So I want to publicly acknowledge that, yes, Verizon has ad fellows, but they also had Inroads, and I wouldn't be here without it, so thank you. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give it up for Tiff and our CMO Power Panel. That was really, really good. So some of you are really excited about this break, obviously, because you're headed out. We're going to let you take a break and process and make sure that you're sharing, so you know how to do that. While you're all out in the foyer, take a stand with our presenting and activation partners. Be sure to stop by the SiriusXM and Pandora Take a Stand experience, where you can take pictures. It's really cool. You can add to a Pandora Take a Stand playlist. I want to know what type of music you like. Send that to me. Be sure to let us know what you take a stand for. And then you can also go to the Google YouTube Artist Studio to get a headshot done. I like headshots. Write your future self a postcard, a print, a poster to add to the evolving Wheat Paste wall, and upload your story to the StoryCorps community page. Also visit the Facebook studio. Guys, I need you to quiet down just a little bit. The break hasn't officially started, but it will. Visit the Facebook studio and share how together we take a stand and raise our voices. And also at the Microsoft booth, you can create a custom GIF of your commitment to take a stand for our communities, okay? And we want to make sure that you definitely hit up the expanded ADCOLOR pop-up store. How many of you like me and Tiff's jacket? Yeah, it's dope, thank you. We've got your swag ready to go there. The limited edition camo jacket is there. It's limited edition, so you will have this for years to come. Our tagline this year is stand out, so you gotta love that. And when we come back, we talk about the new campaign from P&G that opened up a long overdue conversation about race, image, and masculinity. So I think that's gonna be a really good one. We'll see you back here in 30 minutes. Be present, be on time. I look forward to seeing you. Use the hashtag, take a stand, and @ADCOLOR. Thanks so much, guys.